Starnak people, ancient white giants, or moon-eyed beings. America has a secret history, one passed down not in textbooks, but in whispers. From two different corners of the continent come two conflicting stories of a lost, pale-skinned race. In the west, the Navajo tell of the Starnak people, powerful, white-skinned giants who mastered ancient technology before vanishing without a trace. But in the east, the Cherokee remember the moon-eyed people, a small, reclusive race that lived in caves and could only come out at night. Are these two wildly different legends just scrambled versions of the same story? Or is the truth about America's hidden past something else entirely? Let's compare the tales and see if we can separate the history from the myth. Part 1. The Legend of the Starnak People. In the vast deserts and canyons of the American West, there's a legend among the Navajo, or Dene, that challenges our entire understanding of ancient America. It tells of a time long before their own, when the land was ruled by a race of beings called the Starnak people. According to these oral traditions, the Starnak weren't like any of the indigenous tribes. They were described as a regal, towering race of white-skinned giants. But it wasn't just their size that set them apart. The legends claim they had a mastery of technology that was far beyond any other culture of the time. They were supposedly expert miners, pulling resources from the earth with incredible skill, and their power was absolute. They built strongholds across the Americas and were said to have dominated and even enslaved other tribes. It's a powerful story, painting a picture of a lost civilization with incredible strength. But right here is where things get tricky. While some authors and researchers, especially the late Dr. Donald N. Yates, have presented this legend with conviction, the Starnak aren't actually a well-known part of mainstream Navajo oral tradition. You won't find them in the widely documented creation stories of the Dene. Instead, the story seems to live on the fringes, its origins unclear, and its details mostly amplified by non-native writers. Yates, who focused on Native American ancestry, presented the Starnak as a real part of Navajo history. He even speculated that the name Starnak might be a distorted version of Anakim, the biblical giants from the Old Testament. It's a fascinating theory, trying to connect Native American lore to a global history of giants, but it is highly speculative. The end of the Starnak is just as mysterious as their beginning. Some versions say they were wiped out in a great cataclysm, a sort of divine punishment for their arrogance. Others have a more sci-fi ending. They went back to the heavens, returning to a home in the stars. This ending adds another layer of intrigue, echoing star people legends from other cultures, even though the Starnak are consistently described as physical, earthbound giants, not spirits from the sky. This story of giant rulers isn't unique. To the east, the Choctaw people have traditions of the Nahulo. According to 19th century historian Horatio Bardwell Cushman, the Choctaw originally used Nahulo to describe a race of giant, white-skinned cannibals they fought when they first arrived in Mississippi. Cushman noted that the word later just came to mean all white people. This shows how hard it can be to separate ancient folklore from stories that were influenced by later contact with Europeans. Similarly, an 1857 account from a Comanche chief named Rolling Thunder tells a striking story. He allegedly described a race of 10-foot-tall white men who, innumerable moons ago, ruled a vast territory. These giants were masters of craft and war, with cities in the valleys protected by forts on the mountaintops. But they became arrogant and cruel, so the Great Spirit wiped them from the earth with fire and a flood. It's a gripping story, but again, it's filtered through a non-native author, making its authenticity as a pure Comanche tradition debatable. So whether they're called Starnake, Nahulo, or something else, a pattern emerges. A tall, pale, technologically advanced, and often arrogant race that ruled the land before mysteriously disappearing. But were these empire builders the only pale-skinned people in America's hidden history? To answer that, we have to leave the sun-scorched west and head to the misty mountains of the east, where a very different story is told. Part 2. The Legend of the Moon-Eyed People. So, we have these powerful giants out west, but as we move into the ancient rolling hills of the southern Appalachians, we find a legend that's just as old, but totally different. This is the story of the Moon-Eyed People, a tale kept alive in the oral traditions of the Cherokee. Unlike the towering Starnake, the Moon-Eyed People are not remembered as giants. Their name comes from their most defining trait. Their eyes were so sensitive to light that they were basically blind in the daytime. Because of this, they were a nocturnal people, living in the darkness of caves and underground tunnels, only coming out to live and work under the soft light of the moon. Some versions of the tale also add that they were short in stature. The first person to write this legend down was botanist Benjamin Smith Barton in 1797. He recorded that the Cherokee told him that when they first arrived in the country which they inhabit, they found it possessed by certain moon-eyed people who could not see in the daytime. Across most tellings, they are described as having pale, white skin, with some accounts even mentioning beards and blue eyes, features that were uncommon among the native people of the area. What's really interesting is that the Cherokee legends don't describe them as monsters or spirits. They're remembered as humans, another group of people who just happen to look very different. This detail grounds the legend in a kind of reality, making it feel less like a fairy tale and more like a folk memory of a real encounter. Now, there is some confusion. The Cherokee name sometimes associated with them, Yunwi-Tsunsdi, can also refer to a completely different group in their folklore, a race of magical little people, kind of like gnomes or fairies. These little people are usually invisible, love music, and can be helpful or mischievous. They are definitely not the mortal, light-sensitive, moon-eyed people. It seems that over time, the details of these two separate traditions got a bit mixed up in modern retellings. The story of what happened to the moon-eyed people is the core of the legend. The Cherokee, who were migrating into the Appalachian region, came into conflict with them. Knowing their enemy's weakness, the Cherokee planned a final attack on a night with a bright, full moon. The intense moonlight was supposedly as blinding to the moon-eyed people as the sun, leaving them helpless. The Cherokee overwhelmed them in a decisive battle, drove them from their land near the Hiwassee River, and forced them to flee west, never to be seen again. The most famous piece of evidence tied to this legend is a mysterious stone wall in northern Georgia at Fort Mountain. This zigzagging wall stretches for 855 feet across the mountaintop. For centuries, Cherokee oral tradition was the only explanation for it. The moon-eyed people built it as a defense before the Cherokee drove them out. When you visit Fort Mountain today, you can feel the mystery. The wall is obviously ancient, and its purpose isn't clear. But modern archaeology tells a different story. Most archaeologists now believe the wall was built by Native Americans around 500 AD, not as a military fort, but as a ceremonial site. Some features even seem to align with astronomical events, like the winter solstice sunset. The official conclusion is that it was most likely built by pre-Cherokee or early Cherokee peoples, which directly contradicts the legend. And yet, the story persists. For European settlers, the legend was especially exciting. Could these pale, bearded people be proof of a European expedition that beat Columbus? The most popular theory connected the moon-eyed people to the Welsh legend of Prince Madoc. The story goes that in 1170, Madoc sailed to America and started a colony. His descendants, it was claimed, were the white, moon-eyed people. While it's a romantic idea, this theory has been completely debunked. There is no archaeological, linguistic, or genetic evidence to back up the story of Prince Madoc. It's a piece of folklore that captured people's imaginations, but has no basis in fact. So what are we left with? We have a fascinating Cherokee oral tradition about a distinct group of people. But the archaeological evidence points to indigenous builders for the key site, and the popular European theories have been proven false. The legend of the moon-eyed people exists in that gray area, too specific to just be a fantasy, but without the physical evidence to be called history. Part 3. The Investigation. A Tale of Two Peoples. Okay, with both legends in front of us, we can finally ask the main question. Are the Starnak people and the moon-eyed people the same? Are these just two different versions of one story about a lost, pale race in America? Let's put them side by side. Right away, the contradictions aren't just small details. They're fundamental. First, geography. The Starnak are a legend of the American West, the deserts and canyons. The moon-eyed people are from the complete opposite side of the country, the Appalachian Mountains of the East. That's thousands of miles of separation, which is the first big clue we're talking about two different traditions. Next, their physical descriptions. The Starnak are always described as giants, tall, regal, powerful. The moon-eyed people? The opposite. They are remembered as being small or short. While both are called pale or white, their supposed size couldn't be more different. One is a race of giants, the other is a race of small folk. What about their lifestyle and technology? The Starnak were supposedly advanced miners and empire builders who constructed great fortifications. The moon-eyed people were reclusive cave dwellers. Their biggest supposed accomplishment, the Fort Mountain Wall, is a simple stone structure, not the mark of a high-tech society. They weren't conquerors, they were the conquered. And finally, their fate. The Starnak were so arrogant that they were destroyed by the Great Spirit, or fled back to the stars. The moon-eyed people were simply defeated in a territorial war by the migrating Cherokee and forced to flee. When you lay it all out, the conclusion is pretty clear. The idea that the Starnak and the moon-eyed people are the same just doesn't work. The details don't just differ, they're polar opposites. One is a legend of sun-drenched giants in the west. The other is a legend of nocturnal cave dwellers in the east. They are two separate legends from different tribes in different parts of the continent, describing completely different kinds of people. But they do share that one tantalizing detail, the memory of a pale-skinned people who were here before them. And that just makes the mystery deeper. Why do these stories exist at all? To find out, we have to look at the most controversial claims of all, giant skeletons and the conspiracy theories that surround them. Part 4. The evidence and the propaganda. So, if they aren't the same people, we're still left with this theme of a lost, white race in ancient America.
This idea has fascinated people for centuries, and it's usually propped up by three things:
supposed giant skeletons, mysterious artifacts, and a massive conspiracy theory. Let's start with the most sensational claim: giant bones. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers loved to run stories about enormous skeletons being dug up from ancient burial mounds. The Choctaw legend of the Nahulo giants seemed to be proven true when excavations in Tennessee reportedly uncovered skeletons of immense size. But the most famous case comes from Nevada and a legend about the Site Ka. Paiute oral tradition tells of a war against red-haired, cannibalistic giants who lived in what we now call Lovelock Cave. The legend says the Paiute trapped the last of these giants in the cave and lit a huge fire at the entrance, wiping them out. For a long time, this was just a story. Then, in 1911, guano miners digging in Lovelock Cave started finding thousands of ancient artifacts and human remains. Immediately, reports flew that the skeletons were gigantic, some even 8 or 10 feet tall, with red hair still attached. For many, this was the smoking gun, physical proof of the Paiute legend. But what did scientists actually find? When archaeologists from the University of California excavated the site, they cataloged over 10,000 artifacts. But their official reports and every scientific analysis since show no giant skeletons. The bones were all within the normal size range for ancient people. And the red hair? That's just what happens to dark hair over centuries of preservation in certain conditions. The pigment breaks down. From a scientific view, the discovery of giants was a total bust. This is a recurring pattern. Most of the 19th century giant reports were either hoaxes, misidentified animal bones, like from a mastodon, or just wishful thinking. There has never been a single scientifically verified giant human skeleton documented in North America. So, if the bones don't hold up, what about the artifacts? Well, this is where you get claims about the Fort Mountain Wall, or ancient Irish script being found on American rocks. But none of this has ever held up to scrutiny. And that brings us to the final pillar of this belief system, the conspiracy. If the evidence is so flimsy, where did all the giant skeletons go? The most popular theory is that the Smithsonian Institution covered it all up. The story goes that the Smithsonian seized and destroyed thousands of giant skeletons to protect mainstream science and hide the real history of America. This theory is incredibly effective because it explains away the lack of evidence. The proof existed, they say. It was just hidden. The only problem? The conspiracy theory itself is a hoax. It started as a satirical article from a website, World News Daily Report, that openly states its content is fake. But the headline, Smithsonian admits to destruction of thousands of giant human skeletons, was screenshotted and has been passed off as fact ever since. The Smithsonian has debunked this claim again and again, but the myth of a cover-up is just more exciting than the truth. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable part of the investigation. Why were stories of a pre-Indian white race so popular in the 19th century? You have to remember the context. This was the era of manifest destiny. American settlers were expanding west, violently displacing Native American tribes. A story about a lost white civilization that was here before the Native Americans was an incredibly useful political tool. It subtly justified colonization. If a sophisticated white race were the original inhabitants, then settlers weren't invaders. They were just reclaiming their lost inheritance. It was used to delegitimize Native American claims to their own land. The Cherokee legend of the Moon-Eyed People, for example, was twisted from a story about a territorial conflict into proof that the Cherokee had stolen the land from a white race, a convenient narrative for settlers who wanted that same land. This doesn't mean the original legends were created for this purpose, but it does mean they were hijacked, misinterpreted, and weaponized as propaganda to support racist and colonialist ideas. So, after all that, what's the final verdict? It's clear the Starnake people and the Moon-Eyed People are not the same. They are two separate, contradictory legends from opposite ends of the continent. One is about giant, powerful rulers in the west. The other is about small, nocturnal cave dwellers in the east. Trying to mash them together into one story of a lost white race just doesn't work. When we look at the supposed proof for these races, the giant skeletons, the out-of-place artifacts, it all falls apart under scrutiny. The stories are a mix of hoaxes, honest mistakes, and sensationalism. And the giant conspiracy theory that's supposed to hold it all together is based on a literal piece of fake news. We also can't ignore the uncomfortable history of how these legends were used as propaganda to justify displacing Native Americans. It's impossible to separate the original stories from the political baggage they were forced to carry. So, are the legends meaningless? Not at all. Oral traditions aren't always meant to be literal history. They can be moral tales, like the Comanche story of giants destroyed for their pride. They can be explanations for things people didn't understand, like the Cherokee linking the Fort Mountain Wall to the Moon-Eyed People. Or they can be mythologized memories of a real clash with a neighboring tribe, that simply had different characteristics. The power of these stories isn't in whether they are factually true. It's in the questions they make us ask about hidden history and what we think we know. The legends of the Starnake and the Moon-Eyed People persist because they're fascinating mysteries, fragments of a forgotten American epic woven from myth, memory, and propaganda. The truth of these legends might not be buried in the ground, but in the stories we tell about the worlds that came before our own. But that's just my take after digging into the lore and the history. What do you think? Did I miss a key connection between these legends? Could there be a kernel of truth to the stories of giants? Or is it all just powerful myth? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring the hidden corners of history, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next investigation.